Welcome to the Prison Professors Podcast. We serve people who face challenges with prosecution, sentencing, and prison. My co-founders are Sean Hopwood and Justin Paperny. My name is Michael Santos. We create digital content and our team offers individual consulting services. We also assist agencies that want to improve outcomes. To learn how we can help you, text the word PrisonPro to 44222. Again, text PrisonPro to 44222 and get our free brochure. You can also visit us at prisonprofessors.com or contact Justin at 818-424-2220. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Send confirmation that you reviewed our podcast and we'll send you a free digital book. Stay tuned for a 20 to 30-minute episode of Prison Professors. Welcome to Prison Professors. I'm really thrilled to introduce a young entrepreneur, an entrepreneur that didn't get his training at an MBA program, but rather he got his training while he was in prison. It wasn't his first time to prison. This is a guy who learned how to turn his life around. He's going to share his story with us. I want to let Spencer, his name is Spencer Oberg. He is with BFY Food Group and Good Planet Food Group, and he's going to talk with us about preparing yourself while you're in custody for a life of success and meaning and relevance when you get out. Spencer, welcome to the Prison Professors program. Why don't you give our audience a little bit of insight into your background?
Wow. Thank you for that introduction, Michael. You know, my background, I kind of feel like it's really similar to a lot of kids who were misguided as youth. You know, I had a good family upbringing, so I can't put it off on that. But when I was pretty young, I started hanging out with, shall we say, I thought they were the cool kids back then. But it was definitely the wrong crowd. I was looking up to the guys who were doing what they wanted to do, skipping school, smoking cigarettes, you know. So at a pretty young age, I started messing around with marijuana, and then it got into heavier drugs. And, you know, before I knew it, by the time I was, 15 years old, I was getting in trouble with the law. I did some time in juvenile hall and then went to some treatment centers. So, you know, even though I did a pretty good job for a while there at, you know, maintaining decent grades, even though I only went to school half the time, the vast majority of my attention was focused on trying to be, you know, one of the bad boys and heading down that road.
You said you started getting in trouble when you were in your mid-teens and you went into a juvenile detention center. What type of crimes were you accused of committing that put you in juvenile detention?
I was accused of malicious mischief for breaking a car window, and assault for, and what they call felony harassment, which basically means they say that, you know, I threatened somebody.
Okay. How long were you in juvenile detention?
I did about 30 days there. And
when you were there, what was your mindset?
Wow. I think my mindset was really that I was just kind of terrified and wanted to figure out the fastest way to get out of there and get back to partying and doing what I was doing with my so-called friends.
Got it. So you get out of juvenile hall. What are you doing with your life during, you know, that period of time? You know, do you learn anything that makes you change your behavior, or do you really?
No.
Yep. Okay.
No. You know, as part of that juvenile detention experience, I had to do some treatment. So it was kind of a roller coaster. I got out of juvenile detention. Went back with my old friends for a little while, then had to go to treatment. So, you know, I was partying, and then I was clean, and then I was partying some more. So it was really a roller coaster, and I managed to get into Running Start while I was doing that. So I was going to high school and college for a couple of semesters, but I was still partying and messing around, you know, by night, I guess, if you will.
Did you graduate from high school?
I didn't. Nope, I didn't. As part of this, the same interaction with the juvenile justice system, I ended up having to go to another treatment because I got back involved with drugs and failed the UA. So they sent me to treatment back in New York, and that really kind of interrupted my school trajectory. And I just decided that it was better to get my GED and, you know, start taking college classes kind of on my own, although that was definitely with fits and starts as well. I did maybe a quarter or two and then right back down to the same old games.
Got it. And so what happens that brings you into the adult criminal justice system?
Well, it's all centered around the drug world. And about, 17, 18 years old, I am getting back in with the drug crowd and back into the drug world. And I start to get involved in some of the crimes that kind of center around that.
Is that drug sales?
A little bit of that, but really what the problem was like some forgeries and a theft, and that was happening like literally days after I turned 18 years old.
And when do you get caught? How old are you when you get caught?
A few days after I turned 18 years old. I wasn't very good at it, apparently.
Get it. So you get arrested on the spot, or do they come after you after an investigation? What transpires that brings you into the judicial system and then prison?
Well, they were investigating what was going on behind, those crimes and who was involved. And within a couple of weeks, they tracked down where I was and arrested me. And I entered the justice system as an adult.
And where did you start? What jail were you in?
Pierce County.
So you were in the Pierce County Jail. That's a place where I started my journey as well. I was in Unit 4 North, and still remember it very well.
It's a hard place to forget.
1987. I was 23 years old and facing a sentence of life without parole. When I recognized that actually that's where my transformation began, in that Pierce County Jail. Tell us about your impression, or the impression that Pierce County Jail made upon you as an 18-year-old going into the system and facing some time in state prison. Or was it state prison or federal prison?
State prison.
So you're facing time in the Washington State Department of Corrections. You're starting off at the Pierce County Jail. Let us know your mindset there.
I was still at the point where it was really, I felt like I dug myself into a hole, and I was more worried about how to get out of that hole and the external consequences of what I'd done. I got myself into this mess, and now I'm facing not only time in prison, but a criminal record and, a judgment from family and, potential employers in the future. I was really worried about all these external things that were consequences of what I'd gotten myself involved in, and how to get out of those. I hadn't at that point in my journey begun to really examine myself and what the root of the external consequences were.
That sounds pretty sophisticated, Spencer. Are you telling me that at that time I was just trying to play spades and get through jail? Or what were you thinking?
Pretty much. At that point, it was, how do I make these next, it ended up only being about 12 and a half months. How do I make these next 12 and a half months go by as quickly as possible so I can get out and pretend like it never happened?
So not really thinking about building a life at that point, just saying, let these calendar pages turn so I can get back home. Not really thinking about what I'm going to do when I get home.
No, I really didn't take, I didn't take the long view at that point.
So when you get out, you're about what, 19 or 20?
19.
You're about 19 years old. How does that criminal conviction plus a juvenile record, how does that influence your life when you return to society at 19 years old? What do you do?
Well, for me, I think it was more internal than anything, right? I was absolutely bound and determined to make sure that nobody outside of my immediate family, that went through the journey with me, but that nobody would find out about it. So right when I got out, I started going back to college and pretty much just pretended like that the last 12 and a half months hadn't happened. And I was always afraid that there was going to be some kind of major fallout. I was waiting for the other proverbial shoe to drop, that somebody was going to, that my professors were going to find out. Or, once I moved past that little portion of technical education that I got into the workforce and got a job in Issaquah with a company called Eastside Services, managing an automotive company. It was a fantastic opportunity. But again, I presented myself, as though that part of my life had never happened. And I was so afraid that somebody was going to find out and I was going to be barred from all these, from an opportunity to build something with my life, even though I wasn't sure what that looked like at that point. So I hid from it. And nobody ever really nobody was ever the wiser, I guess, if you will. And frankly, looking back at it, I don't think that they really cared. They were looking at me for who I was in that moment, and they weren't.
And
as
what value you could provide to the
from.
company?
What? Sorry?
I said, I assume they were looking and say what value you could provide to the company. And if you could provide value, it was going to be okay.
Absolutely.
So How long did that life of stability last for you?
It lasted for about a year and a half, I would say.
Then what happened?
And then I hurt myself on the job and started taking pain medication. And over a period of time, that evolved its way back into getting more active in the drug world again. So, I started taking pain medication, started to get dependent on it.
What was that? Oxycodone or something like that?
Started out with oxycodone and then pretty quickly went up to Oxycontin. And it didn't take me very long of using that and kind of being around people that did to figure out how much it was worth. So, that led into some entrepreneurial ventures, some less than legal entrepreneurial ventures on the side, which eventually kind of took over my life. And I couldn't balance, that living a regular life and working a regular job and helping to run a company and the criminal lifestyle as well. So it all kind of fell apart.
So it falls apart. You become a full-time criminal at that point?
Pretty much.
Living off of the money that you're earning from selling drugs?
Pretty much, yeah.
And how long does that period of time last before the government comes calling again?
Well, I don't think I'm a very good criminal because it didn't last very long.
I wasn't either.
maybe 6 months to a year, and my life just completely spiraled out of control. And it didn't take long before I have no idea what that. Hold on 1 second here.
You're coming across fine on this end.
Am I?
Yeah,
okay,
just keep
fantastic.
talking, buddy.
We'll just keep talking. I don't know.
Yeah, because I'm recording fine here. Don't even pay attention. Just continue with the story.
All right, fantastic. So
So you were telling me about.
Please.
I was asking you what was it like? You get deeply involved in drug sales. You're totally doing criminal. Don't do anything with your computer because I'm recording you on this end.
Okay,
so
fantastic.
Just talk. Okay. So you're going through the prison system, or rather the judicial system. How do you get caught, and what do you do when you get taken into custody?
Well, the main thing that I was involved in were prescription forgeries, and they were investigating what was going on in this area for quite a long period of time, and were following me and had me under surveillance and all this other stuff. So I had a few run-ins. I was arrested a few times and then released either on my own recognizance, as they call it, or on bail. So I was in and out maybe 3 or 4 times. And after those, I guess, momentary interactions with the law and how they built up over, gosh, I think it was probably about 6 months from the first time that I was arrested and released to when I was arrested and then maintained in custody, because, all these different charges from my various interactions and their various investigations had come together, and they finally put together enough of a picture of what was going on where they said, we think it's probably better if you just stay in here with us.
And how much time did you eventually get for those crimes?
Well, that ended up being 119 months.
So
we got
10
there.
years.
Yep, 10 years. So, but we got there a little bit of through a little bit of an end run around the side, if you will. Once about this time in my life is when I started to figure out that I had a couple of different options, right? I could continue down the same path that I'd been going on since I was a pretty young teenager. I could keep using drugs, selling drugs, being involved in the criminal lifestyle. And that was going to either get me a life sentence because I was going to get involved in something that was really serious, or it was going to kill me. I had a really, really horrific experience with an overdose on ecstasy right towards the end of my encounters with the law that I was just telling you about. And that kind of opened my eyes. I mean, it wasn't an instant thing like, oh, come to Jesus moment, everything's bright and the birds are chirping and I have all the answers now. But it really helped me to come to grips with the reality of the path that I was on, and that I needed to really examine myself and my life and where I was going and what I was going to do with it. So when I entered basically jail, and this is King County Jail this time, I was ready to take responsibility for everything that I had done, first off, and really begin trying to figure out where my life was going to go long term. So when I came in, it wasn't like, okay, we're going to take this to trial and I'm going to fight it. It was, I recognize that I've done some things that are very wrong, and I want to do what I can to take responsibility for that, to pay whatever debt to society I've incurred and start moving forward with my life. So I took a plea agreement for 84 months. And then there were charges out of 2 counties. The first judge thought that was fair. And then when I got to Pierce County, the second judge decided that, based on everything that was on paper in front of him, that wasn't enough time. So he ended up giving me the 10 years.
So you go into this prison system with 10 years. You're about that time, about what, 22, 23 years old?
Mm-hmm.
So what is your mindset on what you're going to do? You'd already had a shift in mindset that you were going to change your life. Now you're going into state prison. What types of activities, or how does this shift in mindset, or how does your mindset influence your adjustment while you're inside?
One of the best ways that I could figure to really start making some kind of a change in my life was to start taking education seriously. I didn't have the answer on how to answer the questions that I was starting to really ask myself. But, with the way that I was brought up, there was always an emphasis put on education. So my goal going into prison was that I'm going to take this time and I'm going to walk out with at least a bachelor's degree. So from the moment that I got to the receiving units in Shelton, I started asking how to do that. How do I go to college? How do I get a bachelor's degree while I'm here? I got to tell you, I got some pretty crazy looks especially from the staff members, because that just, it wasn't something that, not only was it not something that people asked about, but it's not something that they offer, especially the state themselves. So it wasn't an easy thing to find. When I got to my mother institution, which was Monroe, Washington State Reformatory, it didn't take me too long of asking those questions and getting a few crazy looks that somebody directed me to University Beyond Bars. And that was it was a nonprofit organization, completely privately funded, really grassroots at that point, but they were providing college education in there. So I got involved and started to roll up my sleeves and really not only pursue a degree, but there were tons of classes that didn't even offer credit that I just, I wanted to get involved in. I wanted to learn. I wanted to expand my perspective and really start digging into who I was, but more importantly, who I wanted to become.
And did that pursuit of education result in influencing the types of people you associated with in prison and influence maybe your disciplinary path in prison?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that was one of the more valuable aspects of getting involved in that in prison, is that, I had a peer group who were similarly focused on doing something better for themselves, their families, society as a whole, right? I mean, we all had this perspective, like we made some seriously poor choices in life, but those poor choices don't have to dictate who we are. We can do something differently. And we were all, working toward that end. So it was incredible to be able to surround myself with guys with that similar mindset who were really pursuing excellence in their own way, rather than having to worry about, prison politics, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
I am. And I'm also familiar that the path that you took is the same path that I took by focusing on education and contribution and building a strong support network and reconciling with society. In my case, it really helped me in staying out of trouble. You also had an opportunity while you were up there to meet my partner. Is that right? Tell us about that.
So through University Beyond Bars, they bring in volunteers from outside to teach classes. One of the gentlemen who taught a class, his name's Joe Brotherton, fantastic guy. He's a professor, I believe, at Seattle U and a very successful entrepreneur. One of the ways he loves to teach class is to bring in people from the outside, because he loves to introduce them to the men in prison and maybe help shift their perspective, but he loved to introduce us to those kind of men to really help open up our eyes to the possibilities. So Sean Hopwood was one of Joe Brotherton's guests in a leadership class that I took. And he was pretty fresh out of prison at that point, and he just shared his story with me, with all of us. And, it was those kind of interactions with guys such as yourself who have walked the same path and really been able to overcome the challenge and do something incredible with it that I think helped to inspire me to turn it into a positive. Right? So
you said that you read my book. Were you in Monroe or were you home when you read my book?
I was in Monroe, but it was after I met Sean. So I read your book after I transferred to the camp next door. So that was probably a year and a half after.
How did you find it?
One of my friends, actually. So a friend of mine, I did a TEDx talk while I was in prison, and I met this guy, Ryan, when I was, they have orientation. They got all these new guys coming in.
Did you do that TEDx talk with Dan Pacholke?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. I was supposed to go up there and speak at that event.
Oh, man. Well, that's okay.
Good for you.
It was a good event.
I know it was.
So I was practicing for my TED talk to this new group of guys coming in, and one of the guys was my friend Ryan, and we hit it off from there. We were involved in Toastmasters and University Beyond Bars together after that. But anyway, when he came over to the camp, he said, "Hey, man, I just read this book by this guy, Michael Santos, and it's right up your alley. Sounds like an incredible guy. Here's the book. You should read it." And I did. And it was a great book, and your story was very powerful.
I'm so glad that you're on our program, because your story is incredibly powerful. And what it really does is validate the message that Sean and our other partner, Justin, are trying to bring into prisons. And that is the decisions that somebody makes while they're in custody has a direct relationship on their prospects for success through the journey, and of course their success when they come home. So we are going to be using your story to go into prisons and jails across the United States to let guys understand how important it is to focus on education, how important it is to choose friends wisely, how important it is to reject the criminal lifestyle, so that it can result in you building new opportunities and a new life and just turning a new page so that you can become a fully functioning member of society. And right now, you are just finishing your period of time on what is it, home confinement, or is it in the halfway house, or what were you in that you just got free?
Well, it would be, I think, the equivalent to your experience with a halfway house. It's the state system's version of that, and they call it work release. So basically, I'm at a group home. It's it holds 99 people. It's in downtown Seattle, and all of my movements are really restricted. I'm still technically in custody, but I get to come to work. I get to go to school. I get to go out on what they call socials to hang out with family, for a couple of days during the week. And it's really been a heck of a lot better than staying stuck in prison. But my transition to work release started years ago. Like you just said, the decisions that I made to start pursuing an education and to start pursuing change, through introspection and through really trying to evaluate seriously what kind of a person that I wanted to be and what value system I needed to develop in order to do that. That started years ago, but the fruits of that are coming right now. I have an incredible opportunity.
Tell us about that opportunity.
All right. So I work with a company called BFY Food Group and also Good Planet Foods. They're two companies, but ran by the same team. I am a part of a 4-member team of these startups. And the CEO is one of my incredible mentors. His name's David Israel. And we met also through University Beyond Bars. While I was inside, he came in and did a one-time talk also with Joe Brotherton, just like Sean Hopwood did. And I really resonated with his story. Years ago, he entered the criminal justice system through some crazy events. I mean, I'll let him tell his own story, but he was wrongfully accused and convicted, ended up doing 4 years in Monroe's, and it really opened his eyes to the struggle of somebody being able to do something positive with their life while in prison and while once they transition out. So he got really involved. And anyway, his story was so powerful to me. I said, hey man, I really want to stay in touch. I'm trying to walk the path that you've walked. And we developed a good friendship and an excellent mentor type relationship. And so when I got to work release, he had a position waiting for me. He said, come join the team and let's see where it goes from there. And I think it's really grown into something just over the last few months that is an incredible opportunity for me. I feel like I'm, from the feedback that I've gotten, that I'm adding value to the company, to the lives of my teammates. It's humbling and mind-blowing all at the same time how incredible the opportunities that I have now are. But like I said, man, they started years ago and they started in prison. If I wouldn't have done that work starting from the day that I walked in there until the day that I walked out, I wouldn't be where I am now with the prospects that I have now, period.
It's so exciting. And tell us about some of the skills that you learned in prison that you are now using to advance your career and add value and open new relationships and put yourself on a path to becoming an equity stakeholder in a growing company.
Well,
I got to say communication skills have to be one of the top.
That was the first place I was going to go.
Go there, brother. Let me hear it.
All right. So communication skills are vital, right? Business is all about relationships. And being able to communicate is vital to developing any kind of a relationship. And for me, Toastmasters and obviously education as well, you have to learn how to communicate well in writing and also with your classmates when you're taking college classes. So that was an important part of it. But Toastmasters really helped me to be able to communicate effectively through the spoken word, right? I remember the first Toastmasters meeting that I got dragged into. I was terrified. I did not want to stand up in front of this little group of 15 or 20 people and speak, right? I don't know why so many of us have that irrational fear of speaking publicly, but I had it just as bad as anyone else. But since then, I recognized that the guys who were getting up and speaking confidently and charismatically, like they had something I wanted. So even though it terrified me, I kept coming back and being involved in Toastmasters. Not only did it give me some confidence to be able to speak publicly, but it gave me a skill set to do that, to speak publicly and interpersonally. And it also, through the leadership opportunities that organization presented, really helped me to learn some of the skills and to hone some of my own natural aptitude in that area to be an effective leader, not only of other people, but first myself.
This is such an awesome testimonial to the power of education and developing communication skills. We got it from Spencer Oberg, a man who served more than a decade in prison because of some bad decisions he made as a young man. But if we look at him today, we could say nobody would look at this individual. And he's on our screen. Some of you are listening to this on audio. Some of you are able to watch it through our YouTube channel on video. But anybody look at him would never guess in a million years that this guy ever served a day in prison. And I got to say, that was the plan. That's what Spencer told us. That was the plan. When he walked in there, he said, I'm going to come out. The way I speak is not going to be indicative of what I did in the past, but rather what I have learned. And because of that, people were willing to invest in him and give him an opportunity. That's what we strive to teach with the Prison Professors program. And I'm just so grateful to Spencer for being able to share his story, because although we can't go into every prison, we can send this information and we can inspire guys just like Sean and David Israel inspired you. So we're going to be using your story to inspire tens of thousands of other people, hundreds of thousands of other people, and we're very grateful. We look forward to bringing you back on again as you continue to evolve and grow and build your equity in the workforce. But we've come to the end of this episode, David, Spencer, and I'd love it if you could tell our audience, maybe you have some final words of wisdom that you would like to share. And if so, this is your opportunity to express some words to people who are still locked up.
The words of wisdom that I would share is that your future and your success starts right now, today, wherever you are. There's something that you can do. It doesn't matter what your situation. There's something that you can do to start building for wherever you can see yourself in the future. And if you can, it's a little bit of a cliche, but if you can see it, you can be it. If you can visualize that you want to have this successful life, whether that's in business or academics or whatever, you can have that. It takes some time, it takes some effort, and it takes a little bit of help maybe from people who have gone before. But if you start applying yourself and reaching out, accepting that help, and being authentic in who you are and where you've come from, you can take all of the past challenges that you've been in, and maybe even the things that you consider to be mistakes and black marks in your past. You can take that and leverage it into something positive for your future. And pretty soon, you'll find yourself in a position where you can reach back and help somebody else to change their life and live the life of their dreams.
Those are the words of wisdom from our friend Spencer Oberg, who is also a prison professor, and we are just so grateful to have him on the show. If you want to see show notes, please visit prisonprofessors.com. If you'd like to know how our organization tries to help people at different stages of the journey, please text the word Prison Pro to 44222. That's text Prison Pro to 44222, and we will send you a booklet with all types of information, regardless of whether you're just going into the criminal justice system, you're about ready to surrender to prison, whether you're an executive with a prison system so that we can get more stories into your institution like Spencer's, or whether you're a law firm or an employer looking for information about how we can work together to resolve one of the greatest social injustices of our time. We're happy to do that with Prison Professors, and we look forward to working with you. Spencer, thank you so much for taking this time to speak with us today. We will be back tomorrow with another inspiring guest.